divine, safe, empowered, calm, masculine energy. That's what this week's episode of The Higher Self is all about. Welcome, my friend, Peter Bennett.
Yes, brother. Peter Eugene Bennett checking in.
and by the way, for all of you that are listening, I want you to just, like, as Peter is speaking, just feel his energy. This is part of the education process. This is part of awakening and awareness, is we start to realize that certain human beings carry with them certain kind of energy. And the energy can either make you feel good or happy or bad or sad or depressed or scared, right? And so, Peter, you've got wonderful energy. Where let's start with that. Where did that come from?
Got it from my mama.
Yeah?
One thing I want to share on that actually is that I feel like we're all mirrors for one another.
That's right, yeah.
And when I get these beautiful reflections, I just answer by saying, you know, it's intimacy. Into me you see, and I'm sharing that energy, and it's ultimately just reflecting back on what's already within us.
That's right, absolutely.
But yeah, it's been a journey, brother. You know, I think you speak a lot about the dark night of the soul, and so I had to do some work, some excavation to find that inner sunshine.
What was that like for you? What was that process like for you?
Ooh, let's get deep, bro. So when I was 16, my cousin committed suicide. He had a mental health scare, and unfortunately, he wasn't being looked after the day he was committed into a mental health facility. So he ran away and went to a petrol station, a gas station, and set himself on fire. And as a 16-year-old, I wasn't quite equipped to deal with that grief. My family passed down that old adage of real men don't cry.
That's right, yeah.
The stoicism that many of our forefathers have had to deal with due to war and famine, etc. And so I internalized it, bro. I internalized that. There was substance abuse in my family as well, most likely as a result of that shame and that pain that we carried ancestrally. And yeah, for many years, from 16 till 26, maybe even in my early 30s, I was really insecure, actually, really scared of my power. And I played it small.
Wait a minute, how old are you? Because you look like you're 22 or something.
I'm about that now. I'm 36.
Damn, black don't crack,
That's
man.
correct, brother.
Black don't crack. Look at this.
That's
you look
correct.
so young. That is wonderful.
Man. Well, I feel it, you know. And this is what I realized during that kind of struggle, is it brought freedom.
That's
you know,
right.
it connected me to my inner child, the parts of myself that I pushed down because they weren't welcome.
Yeah.
I didn't feel safe. And as a result now, like, I have that joy. I have that playful, that youthful exuberance. And that's where this energy comes from, to answer your question in a long-winded way.
I love that. What was it like for you? Because one of the things, I think if you look at like the main theme of what I talk about is healing, you know, and healing only comes when you stop pretending that there's nothing to heal. When you go into the very thing that you need to heal, you face it, you deal with it, you surrender it, you let it go. And then when you go through that process, you actually allow it to teach you something. There's always a beautiful gift on the opposite side of the fear, the pain, the trauma, and the wounding that you're holding. And when you allow yourself to actually find that gift, a lot of times that becomes your purpose. Your purpose, and it becomes your gift, right? And you can actually utilize that gift, and you can monetize that even, and you can share it with the world, right? And it becomes a very beautiful process if you just allow yourself to face it. So my question for you is, what was the thing that caused you to go like, whoa, something's not right here. I got to deal with this.
For me, this is about a journey into self-leadership. And as a brother who's worked with many men now, hundreds of men, nearly thousands of men on these exact same topics of healing, or what we call coming to alignment, actually, is that I've recognized that turning the stressings into blessings. So during those times where I was like very insecure, as I mentioned, and I was going through a crisis of consciousness, a crisis of identity as well, not quite sure with my multi-racial heritage, growing up all around the world, and never really feeling like I fit in, actually. So this is something that's been there, like a program that's been playing in the background for a while. And it got to the point where I went to university. I was studying anthropology. Always been interested in culture and ancient traditions, and planned to go to the Amazon and live with like the Shipibo and work on like myself as a result of this, like really like testing period in my life, a chapter where everything was up in the air.
Yeah.
And what I realized when I was at university and I was going down this dark tunnel, this rabbit hole of booze, drug abuse, sex, anything I could grab to numb myself.
That's right. Yeah.
I looked at myself in the mirror one day actually, and I just didn't recognize who I was. I was feeling really like, well, a big part of this was I was also lashing out when I was drunk. I had an alter ego called Pedro who had come out, and because I guess I was internalizing a lot of what I felt was like disrespect or people not understanding me, the disconnection. When I was drunk, I was outlandish. I was just like raw and just wild, and would get into fights and get kicked out of clubs. Bouncers would like spit in my face. I've been to A&E, gotten like one of the most like life potentially threatening fights where I had 17 stitches in my head and just nearly had concussion, and woke up in a prison cell the next day and looked at myself in the mirror with all this blood and scum on my face and was like, something's got to change, bro. Like, and that's what stepped me into leadership. Suddenly it was like, okay, now I need to take accountability. Like, I can't play the victim card anymore. It's not my so-and-so caregiver's fault. It's not the fact that my cousin committed suicide. Like, these are all obviously challenges. These are stepping stones is how I see it now. These are blessings, and I've actually internalized and integrated them so they become part of my story. And now they don't define me. I've rewritten that narrative.
I love that. It's so interesting because you know, as you're speaking, I caught, you know, fighting, alcohol, and sex.
Oh yeah.
And these are, you know, for us men, the three ways in which we want to project and we want to protect and we want to, you know, the wounded masculine shows up. I could remember, you know, growing up, you know, it's kind of wild because, and I want to take a moment here and really speak about this. I remember when I would learn about Jesus, right? And I would learn about Jesus, and he obviously says, you know, turn the other cheek, right? And when I would be learning that, you know, back before I was conscious and I did all this work, I'd be like, I'm never gonna turn the flip. Like, I'm cool. I'll go to church and everything, but I would never turn the cheek. I'm gonna fuck somebody up, you know. And then through the work, right? Like, now I could finally not just understand, but understand. You know what I mean?
Understand.
Yeah, I can. They're beautiful. I can understand the power, the immense power that you must live in and be in if a man were to strike you and you have the ability to turn the other cheek, because what you're really doing is you're understanding where he must be in his life to have to physically harm you in that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's the way of the humble warrior, compassion first.
Yeah.
I completely recognize that. And actually what was coming up where you were sharing there was the idea of confrontation. And actually the reality is the world is pretty confronting. There's a lot of conflict out there. And I have this image of a seed that's growing underground, right? Dark, confusing, pressure. And ultimately it's all that creates the seedling that bursts through the soil and that reaches for the light. And in some ways, we need the pressure of life.
Sure.
Human suffering is the realest thing. And it's, like I say, a blessing. Every day to wake up and face life head first, you know, chest out, heart forward.
Do you, you know, real answer here. Do you feel that the more and more work you've done, the less and less of the negativity you attract?
Yeah. I would say that inner work affects the outer world.
That's right.
Right. So the more I've tended to my own garden, the more I've seen the flowers and I smelt the roses.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I had this experience not too long ago. I was walking down Oxford Street, a busy public space here in London, central London, and it was like late at night, probably like 1 or 2 a.m. Lots of revelers, club goers, partiers, drunken, drugged up, you know, enjoying life, or maybe even escaping life. And one brother I saw from down the road, I just sensed his energy.
You could feel
from
it.
a mile away, and he was like a bull in a china shop, just huffing and puffing and bumping into people. And I just had this calm exterior, and I've done the work, right? And I can tell you all about the tools, but I just felt him approaching me, and I just knew that we were going to meet. And interestingly, as soon as he came up to me, we stared each other directly in the eye. And this is a bigger man than me as well. And I just met him with love. No words, just looked him in the eyes, and suddenly he just kind of like sobered up and just stepped around me.
That is beautiful.
And that simple interaction really made me realize that we give what we get. You know, it's all about receiving and reciprocity, right?
And you never fight darkness with darkness. You actually don't even fight it. You just give it love.
It's all about giving it love. And, you know, back to the confrontation, you know, a big part of the work that we do with Sacred Sons, Sons of Zion, all these various brotherhoods, my own retreats and workshops, is we bring conflict into these safe spaces, and we bring agreements into these spaces. We have men and sometimes women as well facing each other and speaking to what they want to confront. Right?
Sure.
Sometimes you ask them to put the boxing gloves on.
I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, from my experience and from many people I've spoken to, like, it's so liberating. Yeah. Many of us have fear of being in conflict or having to face someone in that kind of dangerous way.
But that's part of manhood.
It's part of life.
It's being able to protect your family, you know. I remember I did a retreat once where, you know, we all had to, you know, we had to learn how to fight with knives. We had to put on the boxing gloves, and it was very interesting for me. One of the gifts of growing up in the ghetto is that there's a comfort around it. It's not that big of a deal, you know. Whereas, you know, some of the people, I was literally like, wow, you have never in your life had to be physical, you know. And I think that's that's a stepping stone. That's a part of the journey for a man, you know? Speak to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I did karate growing up. You know, I did various martial arts, and I realized from an early age that actually the first line of defense is my voice, and learning how to like manage conflict. However, in these spaces now where I've started to sharpen my sword, like we say, iron sharpens iron, man sharpens man. The idea of another brother meeting me in the ring and with a skill set, and us agreeing to say we're going to go 50% capacity.
Right.
You know, some people say don't punch me in the face or what have you. And we're able to then like actually dance. Yeah. And that's the nature of life. That's the nature of the masculine and the feminine energy. Everything's a dance, right? Sure. And so when done in that playful, loving way, as we're speaking to, like, it can be so revealing. It can be so healing, right?
Yeah.
And so what I've learned is actually I want to boost my physical form. Like, I'm like, yo, like, I've got so much more to grow. Like, I've focused on my mental, I've focused on my spiritual, and that middle pillar, the physical, the body.
That's right.
Self-care is something I've neglected. And I know many men can resonate with that.
Yeah.
I speak a lot about self-care. How many brothers out there, you know, you might go to the gym. How often do you get body work? How often do you skincare routine? How often do you pour an Epsom salt bath, right? Like things like that I feel like are really important for men nowadays.
Jen's laughing because that's all I do.
Oh,
that's all I do.
That's why you're so fresh and glow, man. That energy is strong within.
Well, you know what it is, brother, is that like I actually relate the feminine to the body, right? And our love of ourselves and our love of our body. And if you think about, this is why so many men have a pot belly, is because we're so disconnected from our feminine, from love, from the energy of love, you know? And so the pot belly is just an outer, right, expression of what is happening deep inside. And that's why for some men, you can go to the gym. You know, I've been around people who go to the gym 4:30 in the morning every single day for 7 years, and that belly is still there. And what men are failing to realize is that it's because we haven't gone to the gym in here. We've been afraid of tapping into the heart.
Completely agree, brother. And that's my style of leadership. It's holistic. It's mind, body, spirit. And that's the mental, that's the physical, that's the spiritual, that's meditation, that's movement, that's manifestation. And interestingly, you talk about pot bellies, right? Me, intuition is the feminine, right? And the more that I've tapped into my body, the more I've been able to navigate life with trust and surrender.
That's right.
And the flow just comes so gracefully, right? But my heart, my intention is my masculine. That in some ways is the engine, right? The fire of my soul that burns within.
Yeah.
And so I have to do practices to balance both, right? And that's how I approach the way that I work with clients, the way that I work with even family nowadays. It's like, you've got to lead by example, right?
You know, it's so beautiful. If one of the things that I'm becoming very, very aware of is, financial struggle. And the fact that there's so many people out there today that unnecessarily are struggling financially. And if you really think about it, money, just like all of life, just like relationships, just like your partner, is just truly a reflection of what's going on inside of you, And if you're struggling financially, what's really happening is you're struggling in different parts of your life. Maybe you're afraid to make a video. Maybe you're afraid to speak out your truth. Maybe you're afraid to, switch careers. Maybe you're afraid to talk to other people. But the way you are in one area of your life, normally that same fear transcends into other areas of your life, And once we start to finally realize and understand and step away from that victim energy, that it's not the government, it's not the economy, and it can't be, because there's people doing incredibly well in the midst of all of that. That means that you can as well.
Yes, brother.
You can as well. And the reason why I'm bringing that up right now is because it sounds like you now make a living through your gift, through
service,
which came from your pain.
Yeah, and you said that earlier, and I wanted to expand on that, actually. The idea of a mentor once told me, what truly breaks your heart is where you find your purpose, right? And through that pain, through the alchemization of grief, we can have praise. And so what I'm hearing, what I'm feeling, brother, what you're putting down is what I'm picking up is these abundance codes, and redefining our relationship to things like finance, to things like family, to romance, etc. And so many people have this scarcity mindset, right? And I'm not going to dog on anyone. Like, we all are dealt a certain deck of cards in life, right?
100%.
Poverty to trauma, abuse, etc. And it's a unique set of tools that we can apply to fixing, DIY our own life's plan, our own masterpiece.
That's right. That's right. I like to see it as we've all been given, like you said, a certain set of tools, and we can look at those tools and we can look at those circumstances in life in one of two ways, either from negative energy or positive energy. So I could look at myself and I can go, man, I'm dark skinned, I'm Hispanic, or I was born in the ghetto, or, my father wasn't around, or, my mom didn't know how to love me, whatever. And I can look at that and I can create a story in my mind and in my heart that means that I'm not worthy of financial abundance and blessings. Or I could look at that and go, you know what? I went through what I went through in life, and I'm going to make a decision from this point forward that maybe I went through it so that in the future, I no longer have to be that kind of parent or that kind of person, and I can give and provide to my children something different. So that's when it becomes a motivation, right? And that's when it becomes inspiration. And that's when you can literally transcend all fear, all anger, any circumstance, and you can literally transform your life.
Yeah. Ancestral healing. That's how it feels to me, that so many of these old patterns, these old habits are passed down, right?
For sure.
Throughout our bloodlines. And for me, in the work that I do, it's important to acknowledge and recognize that. Like, where are we downloading these programs? How can we defrag, right? Reboot the system like you're speaking to, and actually rewrite that narrative. And for me, it's actually about transcending the storyteller. It's about clearing the channel, being a vessel for life, and being as pure as a hollow bone to just whistle through that code of abundance or spirit or creator, source, whatever you want to put down.
I love that, man. Hey, thanks for watching this week's episode of The Higher Self. The reality is if you're watching this show, it's because you are searching for more, and you know deep within your heart and soul that there is more potential from your life. Maybe you desire true financial abundance and freedom. Maybe you desire to heal the fragmented parts of you. Or maybe you desire to attract the relationship of your dreams and be in a relationship with passion and true love. Whatever the case may be, that is what we specialize in. We specialize in helping you and guiding you to healing the fragmented parts of your life that have created these stories in your mind that keep you from living the life of your dreams. If you want to find out how we can guide you in that process, my mastermind Inner Circle does just that. It's a group of like-minded individuals that is wanting the absolute best out of life and will not settle for anything less. We get together 4 times a year in person and twice a month online. If you're in a place in your life where you're ready to discover your truest potential, then Inner Circle is for you. Message us the word Inner Circle right now on Instagram or Facebook at Danny Morel. Our team will message you back and begin to share with you the details about what it would take for you to join our Inner Circle. Message us the words Inner Circle right now. I want to speak about women. Our relationship with women.
Sisters.
Yeah, absolutely. And I say this because, our audience, by the way, never in my entire life did I think that the content that I didn't even think I'd ever be producing this kind of content, but the content that we produce and the shows that we have, our audience is about 75% women. It's a majority of women. And one of the things that I can't help but notice in Instagram comments and just messages that we get is how much pain there is within women in relationship to men. Yeah. Right? So the first person that I would love for you to address is if you're a woman, right? And you have this mindset of, where do you find a good man, or there's no more good men out there. Like, I could feel into your energy. You're a good dude. You're a good brother. I think I'm a good brother. I think Casper's a good guy. Right? So my question is to the women first, and then we'll speak to the men. How do you begin to heal? Right? Because healing is healing. Right? How do you begin to heal and transcend that type of pain so that you can possibly allow the space in the room for a good, aligned man to come into your life?
Yeah. It's great that we're talking about this now, because this is like such a topic that's close to my heart, in the sense that my whole thing is about authenticity, about self-expression, about ultimately like connecting and balancing and sacred union. So when I speak to sisters, I've just done a workshop with men and women for the first time, actually. And I see you doing this beautiful work. And for me, it's such an important piece of men's work is women's work. It's bringing the brothers and the sisters 100%. Together. And, to speak to that, it's acknowledging that actually many men are boys. And I say that about powered leaders to industry experts to your local man on the corner hustling. People are carrying wounds, right? People are unconscious of what is happening underneath the surface. And so they're reacting a lot. And unfortunately, right, or as a blessing, if you want to redirect that, sisters are picking up the pieces, right? And they've had to for time immemorial. And it's the idea of this patriarchy, the dominator culture, where men have been at the top because really they don't actually have the capacity, without being embodied, to process these emotions, to process these wounds, to actually transcend them, right? We talk about masculine alchemy at Sacred Sons. It's the idea of actually looking at your stuff, right? Your baggage, starting to unpack, starting to excavate. And until men start doing that, like, they won't have the ability quite to meet the feminine in the way that we're being called up to, right? Yeah. And so, a lot of sisters reach out and they talk to me about, when are you going to put together like a singles event for men? And it's a big responsibility. And I say this to a lot of people, like, I don't quite know if it's quite the time yet, still have to wait for men to really heed that call. For sure. And for me, it's a big responsibility to actually, have other people connecting without, consent, etc.
And I want to speak to this because, from the outside looking in, even the men's workshops outside of Sacred Sons, that's why you're here. And that's why Albert has been here, is because I know the heart behind it, And I feel like we have a responsibility to share what is true and to share what comes from here. But outside of organizations like Sacred Sons, when I see a man's event and I see the boxing gloves, it's a different energy. It's typically like, fuck him up.
Yeah.
Kick his ass, right?
Yeah.
It's some army sergeant like in your face, breaking you down, showing you pictures of like Ferraris and Lamborghinis and like, don't you want to get, don't you? Well, then take it out on him that you want. And I'm sitting there like, what the hell is this?
Shadow warrior.
It really is. And by the way, this is from people that I know. This is from people that I know that are hosting these workshops and these events. And I'm sitting here thinking like, this is the wrong energy. It's coming from wounding is what it's coming from. Could you speak on that?
Yeah. I mean, I can speak on the fact that I've been there too, brother. I've definitely lashed out. And, I really want to say this like in a public forum, like even people like ourselves, right, who might have a platform now and people see us as potentially men of integrity or what have you, like I'm still doing the work.
100%.
It's still a process. And there's times where I am like internally like, mess him up, get the Ferrari, or even with sisters. Like I've spent a year celibate, right? And
I want to talk about that next.
We'll touch on that. And, semen retention, all these things. And now I'm like open to like meeting people and actually starting to like have like a potential romantic connection, and even in that, like starting to talk to women and feel into dating again. Like I'm a little bit out of practice, and sometimes I might speak too quickly, or I'm very honest, radically honest, very transparent. Like I love to own my vulnerability as I see it as a strength. And so when I'm out there in the marketplace, like I'm not always putting my left right forward. Sometimes I'm like 2 left feet, like falling over myself, and that's part of life. We fall and we get up again. So
when I met Jen, that's all I did was fall over myself. I got the friend card really fast.
Well, it's something special if you're falling over.
Yeah, that's right.
They help pick you up.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So for the men out there in their relationship with women, how do we start that healing? And then I want to get into like
we'll get into the personal story. Ultimately, what I'd say to men is, look, it's time for accountability, right? It's time to start looking at where we have blind spots, right? And a big place is self-inquiry. That's where it always starts. Start to take stock of what's happening when you're feeling out of integrity, when you're feeling out of alignment, what I like to call a disturbance in the force. Like, okay, today I felt a bit off. Like, why is that? Let me look back through my day. Let me journal. Let me meditate. Let me just ponder. And ultimately what happens is we start to recognize that these emotions that are coming up are familiar. They came from an original wound. I look back on my childhood memories and I've written them all down. I've done some shadow work, some intense Jungian psychoanalysis, and I've seen like, oh, that's why I'm shy around certain people. That's why powerful women sometimes make me feel insecure, right? Like I'm looking at myself in that way, and as a result, I now know many of my blind spots. I now bask in the shadow and bring it into the light, because I can now see the way that, again, like we spoke about, the sacred mirrors, the beginning of this conversation about feeling someone's energy and being reflectors, etc. Like, oh, okay, you're just bringing this up in me. It's not something personal. It's just something that like I'm taking heed of today and can work on tomorrow. So to the men who look to get back into good relations with the sisters, my first thing is friendship. Always hold space, be a safe space for women by stepping out of the objectifying, seeing women as a sex object, always wanting one thing. And if that's the case, like I speak to sisters, and if there's like there's an attraction or there's an energy of like this neediness, I'll just say it out loud, no expectation. But like, sister, like I think you're beautiful and I don't feel cool to step into like some kind of container, romantic or not. But like, I just want this to be out in the open, so it's not something that's in the, happening in the background for
Set
me.
the tone.
Set the tone. Yeah. Honesty is the best policy. That's why.
Yeah. I wanna get into this. I went through a process. It literally felt like source, the universe, the angels, the aliens, whoever it is, they were like preparing me for Jen. And I started to have these moments within myself where, you know, I literally heard the voice and said, you know, it was really wild. The first thing I had to do was cord cutting, and I had to cut the cord with any woman that I had ever had sexual interactions with. I also had to cut the cord with any woman that ever maybe like broke my heart, or that there was any sort of emotional attachment or guck or whatever. And then the wildest one, which happened at like 3:33 in the morning or 2:22 in the morning, was I woke up in the middle of the night with my hand like this, and I'm literally like, what the hell? And I'm thrust into the altar at my previous wedding, and I see my ex-wife and the preacher, and I'm like, oh, I never cut the marriage cord. It was wild. I was literally transported into the wedding, and that's when I knew I was getting closer and closer to meeting, you know, the one. Was I was like, I see what's happening. This is the beautiful part of like awakening and being spiritually connected, you know? And part of what had to happen as well was I heard very clearly, it's time for you to be celibate.
Yeah.
You know, and what I find, and please, if you're a man out there or a woman, your journey is your journey. But what I have found time and time again is it's just pretty awesome that when you're ready to call in your partner, there's that season of celibacy, right? Especially if this has been an issue for you, especially if you've seen women as just a physical object, right? It's to clear that energy and to conserve that energy. And you seem to have gone through that period as well. Yeah.
Cultivating presence is how it feels, you know. And I've met people who've been celibate, and there's just a different quality to their aura. It's like, damn, like you're glowing right now. Like meeting a pregnant woman person. And so, yeah, I agree. And I think, you know, it's not necessarily for everyone at every stage of their journey, but for me personally, like I was really cool to it. And I've had periods of celibacy, and I've worked with semen retention and like tantric principles, breath and kundalini energy. And I just found recently, I was like, you know what, I've just come out of a pretty complicated situationship, and I just wanted like to have time to cultivate, to create a new reality where, like you say, preparing the space for potentially meeting my beloved. And you know, this whole thing for me is about sacred union, sacred sons, sacred sisters, like the idea of the feminine and the masculine coming together, balancing earth and sky, so that this planet really can come back into harmony.
That's exactly what's happening right now. That's exactly. And it's starting within each and every one of us.
Exactly.
How did that period for you change your relationship with women?
Well, it's really interesting because I spent a good amount of time like working with like tantric energies, and I'd been polyamorous for a little bit, and I was initiated by a sister who was doing orgasm meditation and really learned a lot about sacred sexuality. However, like it became quite like it ceased to become about like exploration, but it became more about like, I don't want to say exploitation, but that's the first word that came up. It was like
polyamory.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea of just like tantric play parties, temple nights and all that kind of stuff, neo-tantra. And what I realized, it was like, no, these are my base desires. And there's something primal and there's something really beautiful about that. However, like I'm so called, and I have been for a few years now, to be in a monogamous, committed relationship and exploring those ways. And so as a result, like I was like, I'm just going to completely like unplug from this matrix, from this paradigm, and start to reassess what it is I'm calling in. And there's lots of work I've done around manifestation, magic with the K, the idea of like, who is this beautiful sister who can meet me? You know, how can I meet her? How can I prepare this vessel to really like transcend? And the big part of that is all the pieces that we're talking about, all these tools, self-inquiry, self-care, and self-love.
That's it, man. So that's it. Because you know you're ready for real love with a partner when you found real love within yourself.
That's it, brother.
Yeah.
That's it.
I want to speak about polyamory for a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
I never dabbled in it, but it's, you know, especially in Austin, it's such a hot topic in the like conscious community. And yet what I've been exposed to is like the pain behind it. Because to me, polyamory is avoidance. It's avoiding that promise. It's avoiding that commitment. In many ways, it's the opposite of being in your divine masculine energy, because the divine and full masculine is not afraid of commitment. And so whenever people would ask me about polyamory, it would always be women. Like, they would send me these messages. I'd say, one question: do you feel safe? So no. Well, then the feminine has to feel safe. So there's your answer. It's obviously not for you.
For sure.
And the other thing that happens is I cannot express enough how much medicine I have found, not only in the wholeness of our relationship, but in my partner. She literally is like, she's like ayahuasca for me, is what she is. And I find that I have been like the mushrooms for her. Because when you are in true sacred union with the person you're supposed to be with, there's nothing greater than that. And so when you're in polyamory, what I think of is, it might be fun. You might be having a great time. You might feel free. You might be in your primal nature, which we all have. But you are avoiding and missing a very special part of your journey. And until you ask yourself, what am I avoiding? What am I not honoring? It's going to be tough for you to ever feel fulfilled with another human being.
Yeah. I would definitely say different strokes for different folks, pun intended. And the idea of like avoidance. You know, I was definitely conscious of welcoming in the pain, actually. I was open to my ego getting bruised, and ultimately, like, jealousy and insecurities, all these other comparisons came up. And it was powerful, because I looked at it. It was like, okay, here's a blind spot. Here's something that I've been maybe avoiding in past relationships.
So it allowed you.
It brought up
I
a
never
lot
saw
to
it
the
that way.
surface. Yeah, it brought it up to the surface. And I'm not going to say that everyone necessarily has that same approach, but one thing that I found was really powerful was really clear communicating. Like I say, radical honesty, like being really authentic about who I am and who this person is to me as well. And actually, I found it really difficult to communicate at first, because I'd had past programs of being a people pleaser, and the idea of telling someone, like, to their face, like, I'm attracted to someone else, or receiving that they're attracted to someone, was really like triggering, actually. And
I think there's a lot of medicine there.
It was full power, bro. And like, I wouldn't say I recommend it for everyone, but it definitely taught me a lot. And like I say, brought me to where I am today. So yeah, polyamory is fun until until people get burnt. And I think there's a lot of that out there, a lot of burnout.
Yeah. Final thoughts, you know, for the women and the men that are out there, that, you know, you're just another example of what can happen when a human being faces some of the deepest and darkest pain and decides to no longer mask it with anything, not with glamour, not with alcohol, not with, you know, sex, but decides to go in. What would you share?
What's actually coming up for me is what we speak to at Sacred Sons. We call it the ancient future. And the biggest learnings I've had is turning inwards, but also looking outwards to nature, to the wildness of the wilderness, to really inspire, and being aware of the seasons within and without, actually. And so I spent, this year really going into nature, exploring, forest bathing, meditating by the water, sitting under a tree, climbing trees, just being a wild man. And my offer, my invitation is for people to really go back to the source, all right? Like the sun.
That's right.
Wake up with the sun if you can. Go to sleep with the sun. Give time to be in respect and reverence of this beautiful planet that we've been so blessed to walk and tread lightly as well, to respect nature, to respect the ecosystems, to respect even my corner of Babylon, the city of London, making sure I don't throw trash, making sure I, clean up after myself and others, just have a respectful and a loving, compassionate outlook towards the world and others. And I feel like that will really sing true to many people and could potentially put us back on track to, coming home.
I love that. I got one more thing.
All right.
Because I can't help, because this means so much to me.
Yeah.
You know what the greatest sign of you as a man knowing exactly who you are is? That watch.
Mm-hmm.
Because, we have been programmed to think as men that the watch that you wear signifies something, and as a guy who used to literally want to make money for the sole purpose of collecting more watches, that is the first thing I noticed about you. And I love you for that.
Thank you.
That is old school. That reminds me of 1985 New York City, the little, the little electronic shops with the little cameras and little Casio. Tell me about that, man.
Down Canal Street.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. You know what's funny, brother? One of my most blessed tools in the toolkit is Vipassana. I do silent meditation, and it really brought me back into my body. It was a huge embodiment practice of feeling the sensations, breathing, being aware of my presence actually, and being present. And in this process, I was enlightened to the idea, or the concept, or identity, call it what you want, of being a home walker. I feel like I'm walking others home. I'm walking myself home, back to truth, back to love, back to unity, peace, joy, bliss, ease, grace, all those things. And this watch actually, represents that. It's I feel real. I'm not trying to put on a front. I'm not performing. I'm not proving anything. Being authentic in my self-expression.
That's right.
Embodied, sacred masculine. What's up?
I love it. We will end right there. Thank you, man. Thank you for being here. How do people hear about you, find out about you?
Yeah, Men's Work Coach on all platforms, mensworkcoach.com, launching my new website, got some programs in the works, Sacred Sons, immersions all around Europe, from Copenhagen to Amsterdam to Barcelona, back to London. And then in the new year, Sons of Zion, the Melanated Brothers Circle that I'm a part of. And my own workshops with the Men's Work Group as well for men and women. So check out this space.
I love that, man. That's it for this week's episode of The Higher Self. This was beautiful, and I hope you guys felt that energy. I hope you felt that lightness, and I hope that you begin to ask yourself, how could you bring out more of that light, that fun, that comfort in your own life? We'll see you next week on another episode of The Higher Self. Thanks for watching this week's episode of The Higher Self. If you heard something in this week's episode that caused you to think maybe, just maybe, there was a higher potential for your life, maybe there was a potential to earn and receive financial freedom, to attract the relationship of your dreams, or to improve your health, that's what we specialize in. We help wonderful human beings like yourself to unravel all of the limiting thoughts, feelings, and emotions that you've been living through so that you can finally tap into your life's truest potential. If you'd like to talk more about that, we invite you to join us on Instagram or Facebook and email us the word Discover More. And when my team sees that, they will reach out to you, send you the details of how we could help you on your pathway to a life of abundance, fulfillment, and creating the absolute life of your dreams. Message us right now the words Discover More now on Instagram or Facebook, and we'll see you soon.